Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Brian. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today it came at us from Daniel, 30-minute adaptation of Anyara, a Nobel Prize award-winning Swedish epic science fiction poem. The song and poem are about a ship with migrants fleeing a dying Earth en route to Mars, which gets knocked off course. That's a pretty cool concept right there. I think it works well, probably both from a literal storytelling point, but also them being migrants probably has a pretty cool secondary layer to the story as well. It is a 30-minute song, though. You guys have seen the length of this video. I'm anticipating something in the 50 to 60 minute range. Let's dive in though. See what the seventh wonder, nope, just seventh wonder, there's no the there, is bringing to the table with The Great Escape.
I took you in ever so gently. Still you cried and turned from me. You stepped on my heart. I forgave just like mothers do.
You know, I was expecting progressive metal, and there's plenty of time to get there, but this is beautiful. Reminds me of like some acoustic guitar singer-songwriter stuff.
Sit down, let me explain. While my bruises stay, my child, I know you never meant to. These scars just won't fade away, and I'm sure you never knew. I give up, I give in. Help December, let a new year begin. Take what's left.
When did this come out?
And move on.
2023. Okay, this is very much like the vulnerable male vocalist singer of the 2000s who just has guitar. Ooh. Yeah, the pizzicato is a nice sound to use. Oh, nice. Yeah, okay. Straight up film score writing right here. And the bells. Gotta have the timpani. Yep, okay. Very epic sound in general, but there's feelings of danger in here. Chimes. In a lot of ways. Ooh. We're in a nice 7/4 right here. Almost feels like some battle music to, I don't know, some RPG or something. And there's the metal. Ooh. And we've modified it a little bit to fit in a 4/4 with a very similar accent pattern coming from the background strings. Doing a 7 again. It's an interesting folk line on the melody here. It fits the section, but it feels out of place with all of the sounds that we've had so far. Ooh, ooh. That metric modulation. The galloping is interesting because it pushes the song forward in a way that I don't think we've really had yet. Yeah, that's a 19-beat phrase right there. And that's a 12. Okay. So they're playing around a lot with phrasing on this. 4/4 for the vocals to come in. Interestingly, this reminds me of, I just checked out, a Circus Maximus last week.
I am packing my bags, I'm waiting in line. This tragedy forces us away from this land. As I board this creature of steel, I kiss her goodbye, give her time to heal.
Another interesting harmonic direction push from a melody. Is that a mode shift? Was that a 7-beat extension? I don't know, they didn't do it that time. That very contemporary rock harmony. Yeah. Just sounds great. The bass and the drums doing a great job of creating the groove and rhythm here. The moving guitar part underneath the lead melody acting as counterpoint. Oh man, oh that was longer than last time though. Yeah, they love their phrase lengthings. There we go, okay. Yeah, the drums were foreshadowing this, but it was a fake out foreshadow the first time. But they were pushing for this faster momentum. That last section was in 5. Yeah, man, hit it. A lot of arpeggiation in there. Oh, that time shift. That bass. Oh, yeah. The offbeat accents on the bass and drum for that transition. Solid. Interesting combination of feelings here. Very big, powerful sounds. That bass lick though, and working with the drums, like I love that. That is a neat little idea. That's a fretless bass too, right? Finger picked. Such a good sound. Secondary vocal layer on the outside. Okay. There's another mode shift. So that's the intro chord progression for the first verse, and they've paired it with this super chuggy rhythmic thing on the guitars here. Inside the mind's eyes, we lived Dude, that chord progression to wrap that up. Oh, the rise back up. Ah, dang. Their harmonic work is on point so much. Ooh, what was that? There's a fast rhythmic delivery at the beginning of that from the vocal. That was a fun little melody. This is such a silly idea that they just full commitment on. That's another one that's kind of silly, but you know, they just told you that bass was a beast. Being halfway through this song feels both accurate and wrong at the same time. It feels like we've listened to so much music already, but also like, yeah, 16 feels about right. Getting halfway through. So I actually wonder if this song is broken up into movements, because that's the second full stop to silence. You can see over there on the volume meter, it doesn't just go down to minimal, it goes away entirely. Beautiful. Oh, into a 1, 2, 3. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of time in a 30-minute song to use different meters. We've seen 3, 4, 5, 7. Bass work supporting the moving guitars and this melody. Back to something like this. 4 bars of 4. You don't get more straightforward than that. They chopped it up wildly though. Ooh, throwing some Phrygian in there. Oh, a new string instrument back there too. Dulcimer? plucked dulcimer maybe? Harpsichord? I want to get another shot at that. It's too shimmery almost. Oh, I wonder if there was a synth under the dulcimer for that texture layering. These silly ideas again. Jeez. Some darkness in there. We've had weight, we've had metallic angst. This is sort of eerie, especially with that toy piano sounds. I guess maybe just more of a pointed guitar tone. It sounds like a regular piano.
Remain as we part. We're holding on within our cradle of confusion. We've been on rainbows in the dark. No one will ever see us fade.
Is it Rainbow in the Dark? Isn't that Dio? Get a little bit of that rock grit in there. I want these two sides to mix. Doesn't sound like we're gonna get it though. Very interesting textures on that. Back to like a proggy folk idea. Such a clean falsetto. That piano part's fun. The piano ducks out to allow the guitar to fill in the space here.
Today
that a retardondo? Or such a charismatic vocalist, man. I could listen to this guy sing all day. That's a funky idea. Rhythmically, but also harmonically.
We crown the skies without the aura, the life and faith of Adiara.
Dude, that vocal stack is so clean.
Now thousands were weeping and hundreds crying in dismay. 20 years today. Repenting sinners will wither and
We haven't heard too many synth solos. This one's making a lot of use of the mod wheel. Interesting, throwing an alternating 4-2 pattern on top of a straightforward 3. Ooh, that hi-hat work. The bass slide. Oh, they had fun with this.
The hulls of our ship now are void of all but death. Our lives have passed, our hearts were broken by the endless dark. Our new paradise, the one to replace the one we burned so bad. The God we hope for left profane, now wounded and forlorn. On the home we scarred. Now here I stand, my dear. One heart still beats, I bid you farewell. The curtain will now descend. Somewhere in time we were living. Remember us then.
There is another mode shift. They're not overused, but they're certainly used more than most bands do. Once again, kind of bringing a folk side into this. Not something that's represented much, but does show up a couple of times. That's the same melody to kick the song off, right? Or the chord progression's the same. At least that's accurate. I don't know if it's the exact same notes. I mean, that was 30 minutes ago. My memory's only so good. I'm curious if that's going to tie into the narrative, having the song end where it starts. There's still 10 seconds left. I doubt it. Seems like a band who's not going to surprise me. Yeah, there's nothing there. One thing I find interesting is that this is the album closer. It's also the album title, the title track. But every other song is like 5 to 7 minutes long. And then there's this 30-minute epic at the end of this album. Without it, it's basically like a 35-minute album. And then there's this, this massive track to wrap it up. I think that's interesting because a lot of the things I hear in this track, I don't think would translate too well to a shorter song. They do have an 8 and a 7. There's a little bit more room for some of the flourishes we see in here, but I mean, they have 4 and 5 minute songs on this. I'm going to assume that they're nowhere near the type of spectacle that they put on display here, which kind of tells me that they can sort of turn this on when they need it. When they need this like larger theatric epic sound, they can go in that direction, but maybe it's not what they always want to do, or maybe they find it difficult to do, which honestly, even if it is the latter of those two, I don't blame them. It is a lot easier to write a 5-minute song, even if it's completely linear, like ditching the idea of like verse chorus structure. 5-6 minutes of linear music is a lot easier than 30 minutes of things that remain interesting throughout, that feel connected somehow. It's and keeps the audience's attention too. I suppose it's not too wild of a take, given that, you know, even looking at novels versus novellas, films versus short films, it's always easier to write something concise and well contained in a smaller runtime. But I do think that might be the case here, even though they make this sound so good, so easy almost for them. It's probably still a ton of work and is not something they want to pursue all of the time. At least that's kind of the vibe I'm getting here, based on how short the rest of the songs in this album are. To the song, though. So I wrote down a lot of notes. I don't usually take notes unless we're checking out a full album, but I noticed like 4 minutes in, and we already went through like 8 different ideas, and through those ideas we had a bunch of different time signatures, rhythms, phrasings, even styles were in there, harmonic movements. It was a convoluted opening part of the song. I figured I need to take some notes on this because I wasn't going to remember it all. And like I mentioned, that kind of ties in when we hit the halfway mark. I was like, you know, this kind of feels like it, right? It hasn't been that long with the music, but it's just been so crammed that it feels like we've listened to a ton of music already. And that feeling of just constant movement, I think, is prevalent throughout this song. I think the pacing is generally fine, subjectively. I think some people would rather have some of these sections last just a little bit longer. I usually tend to like a brisker pace in my music, and I think it works well here. It is a double-edged sword, though. Some of the sections that I absolutely loved, we kind of left sooner than I would have liked. But generally speaking, I think none of these ideas ever wear out their welcome, and Again, that's also a double-edged sword. On the one hand, you leave me wanting more. It makes me want to go back and listen to the song again to experience those moments. On the other hand, the parts I love don't get given enough love from the artist. And I kind of wish we could spend more time with them. So, it's impossible to make music that's perfectly paced for everyone. This is just my opinion here, but it's a lot of music. I think that is an objective observation here, is that they've crammed a ton of ideas into just 30 and a half minutes. And that is absolutely bonkers. That, again, as I stated earlier, it all generally works. Now, I say generally works because even taking aside the fact that I view this in three movements, having those 2 points where we went to dead silence before moving on to a totally different idea, but even looking within each of these movements themselves, there's still a lot of varying ideas. The song constantly just jumps to the next concept, and while I don't think it's too disjointed, there's usually some sort of connective tissue, and there is frequently some sort of foreshadowing to help pull us into the next idea, whether it's a harmonic shift that's going to help us go into the next melody or the next chord progression, like all of those mode shifts that we were listening to, or it's the drums introducing a new rhythm that's going to engage the speed or perceived tempo of the next section. There's always something that tries to tie everything together. But there is still a lot of very harsh transitions of we were doing this and now we are doing that, and not really having a smooth movement between them. Maybe a little bit of a signaling, but oftentimes also just jumping between concepts. That's kind of par for the course with metal in general, especially progressive metal. It is an observation. I don't know if I should call it a criticism anymore, even if it isn't particularly my favorite, because it's just what the genre does. And so, following along with that, Seventh Wonder writes music that also does that. Although, like I said, I do have a little bit of a bridge built where they gave me quite a few smoother transitions that I enjoyed. So it's a little bit, I think, of just picking the right style of moving between ideas, whether it makes sense to do something a bit more fluidly or to do something that feels a bit more jagged. And maybe knowing the story, having listened to the song a dozen times with lyrics, understanding how the linguistic narrative matches the musical one, some of that stuff's going to help too. Being thrust into this on my first time and being whipped around at every twist and turn, it's going to feel a bit more disjointed than if I understand what's going on. This isn't a popcorn flick that's going to hold my hand all the way. This is like a Kubrick film that's, going to be a little bit more avant-garde and a little bit more daring, but is ultimately probably going to be better for it. It's just going to take a couple of times getting through it to warm up to some of those more esoteric choices. So, I have a few general topics I want to talk about. I don't know if there's a lot of specific things I want to bring up, particularly because there's too many to point out. I think I did a pretty good job of pointing out all of the cool things as I was listening to them. But this is a song that, like I said, there's so much to it that, one, even if I could remember every specific detail, we'd be here for 2 hours trying to dissect this thing. But I honestly, on the other hand, I can't remember all of it. So with tracks of this depth and this width, given the length of it, I tend to break down the analysis into more surface level ideas, patterns that I continue to see repeating that I think are worth talking about and bringing up. Now, I may jump around quite a bit. Normally by this point in a video, I kind of have bullet points of how the topics I want to talk about and how they might bleed into the next, and it kind of creates a nice fluidity of conversation. I'm probably going to be jumping around between ideas. I'm not going to have as much fluidity in my segues on this one. But I think we're going to start off not with structure, even though I do have a general roadmap here, but we're going to look at some specific ideas first that I thought are really cool and they frequently put on display on this track. First up, we just have some fantastic vocal work in here in general. I love the way that the vocals sound, the just general clarity and smoothness to them. I mentioned at the beginning that they sort of reminded me of that stereotypical vulnerable, teen or 20 something with a guitar at college kind of deal from like the early 2000s. It feels like a lot of sort of singer-songwriter stuff that I was hearing at the time. I love it. It feels nostalgic to me while also just being very excellently done. The chord progressions are evocative. The vocal delivery is fantastic. I love the emotion displayed throughout through both instruments. The atmosphere is perfect on it. And it really set me up for the sort of ride we were in on. I really did figure that this was going to be progressive metal in some way, but the intro didn't go in that direction much at all, and that's sort of a fun way to start things. But the vocals right there just solidified themselves. Like, yeah, this is excellent. I don't know if this dude did musical theater or if just self-taught, but sung along to a bunch of musicals, and like that's where he got some of his early like muscle building and stuff like that in his whatever this vocal muscle stuff is. I don't know, I'm not a singer, I don't know how that stuff works, but there's just so many points in here where I'm like, yeah, this dude understands putting tension into his vocals in a way that isn't just like grit. It isn't compression. He understands how to craft a melody through dynamics to evoke emotion rather than just like being surface level emotive. And that's not to say that he doesn't do that either. There's some points in here where he hits like straight up belts. He puts some grit in there, a little bit of a like a fry element to the vocals too when he needs to emphasize specific things. But it's something that he uses very rarely. It's a spice. It really makes those syllables or words stand out against the rest. But he just has a beautiful voice in general. The timbre, the coloring of it, even the vibrato, I think it's nicely used too. Again, it's a spice. It's used in some places. Other times he'll just hold a note flat out too. It's all about knowing how to deliver what he's trying to sing or say in the way that best fits those words. Or at least I assume. I haven't read the lyrics yet. And I certainly haven't and won't in this video have listened to every vocal bit with the lyrics pulled up to kind of see how the delivery might match what's being said. But that's my assumption here based on the way that I hear the emotion being crafted dynamically as these melodies are being sung. But on top of that, there's also the absolutely gorgeous harmonies, and I don't know who is doing these. I don't know if he's providing all the backing tracks to it or if there's other vocalists in the band, but we have these really wide stacks of vocals that typically sit on the outsides of the song. They sound phenomenal. That kind of goes along with the harmonic side of this song, which I'm going to touch on in a little bit, but it is all over the place in like the coolest way. We have more pensive ideas. We have vulnerable sections. We have some that are kind of laden with sorrow a little bit, maybe remorse of some sort. There's Phrygian modes that, well, we only went to that one time, but that was kind of cool. I don't know what they were going for with that. There's like a folky sound that happens. I don't even know. There's so many. We have Rule of Cool Metal, kind of like heavy aggressive stuff too in the metal realm. It's just all over the place. There's so many different, I'm going to probably say keys, if not at least modes going on in here. And it's every time we turn a corner. That's one of the first things I'm thinking of. What's going to be the atmosphere here? What's going to be the emotion on the harmonic scale? What kind of chords are we looking at? What kind of chord progressions are we looking at? And part of that, especially in some of the more metallic sections where the guitars and bass are kind of just laying down some really solid metal riffage, we get this expansion, harmonic expansion coming from these vocals on the side that help transform the section emotionally and atmospherically. and it just sounds great. The production on it is fantastic. I'm going to go out on a limb and say some people might feel this is a bit overproduced, particularly somewhere like it's like somewhere between minute 20 and 25 or something. We had a transition, which was just the mid vocals and the stacks on the outside. You get a very clear hearing or a very clear opportunity to hear this specific stack. And yeah, there's some production on there for sure. Kind of doing whatever is needed to kind of turn it from individual sounds into the stack itself. Because I think the only thing that really stands out is the center vocal that stands out from the stack. The stack kind of feels monolithic, but also because the notes work well at the center, I do hear how they connect, but they do feel separate from the center vocals. But I mean, yeah, there's production put on that. It doesn't sound like, for instance, like Queen's stacked vocals that they did in the past. There's probably some people who just aren't going to like the production on that. And I do think that the vocals are the standout for me, particularly because they have like a heavy metal sound every once in a while. The belting, the vibrato, it's very Dio. It's very, Judas Priest. This sound was very common at a time in metal. But it also just feels more theatrical to me than anything else. Almost as if a theater kid got into metal and decided to mix those two styles of vocal delivery. And that's what I hear a majority of through here. And it doesn't always sound metallic, and I love that. I really do. So yeah, the vocals just all over the place are fantastic. The harmonies, great. Like I said, the dude is super charismatic. I could listen to him sing all day, honestly. It's my cup of tea as far as like male vocals go. There's also the female vocals that we had in two places. I guess it was just one place. We were bouncing between like the A section, which was the metallic section led by the main vocalist, and then the B section, which was that strings, I think it was, or maybe acoustic guitar with the female vocals. I just wish this intermingled a little bit more. I think hearing the two sides of this together, the electric and the acoustic, and both sets of vocals harmonizing or call and response or something, it would have sounded so good. Maybe there's a narrative reason why. Maybe this was a separation of two characters in the story, telling their tales from two perspectives, distanced apart. The cliche thing, right? Where like the person is at home singing about how they miss the person who's off on the adventure, and they're kind of singing the same melody and they're overlapping, but the words are different, right? That's kind of what I picture might be going on here. But just from like a musical standpoint, I really wanted to kind of mix those two instead of keeping them separated. Let me get a marker to... I have a lot of notes. I want to make sure I don't like start doubling up on stuff. Let's see. Oh yeah, we're going to stick with this idea of melodies. Move on to the strings. Not those strings, the bass and the electric guitar. I love this stuff, man. There's a lot of really cool stuff going on in here. Guitar work that's just like, okay, it's fine. There's some... Well, we'll get into those ideas later. But there's some stuff I think, nothing is ever bad. There isn't a riff where I'm like, ooh, that could have been better, or this just feels like filler. Everything's generally pretty good, but there are definitely riffs that I enjoy more than others. But I think what I like more than anything else that these two instruments do is melody writing. The linear bass licks, the bass solo, the guitar solos, the guitar duets, the counterpoint that the guitar plays against the vocals sometimes. Anytime that they're doing something more linear, or maybe just a longer riff itself, moving away from the 2 or 4 bar things maybe to an 8 bar idea. Anything that doesn't feel like it's just a very tight loop. It's always fantastic. They do an excellent job, and this kind of ties into the vocal melodies a little bit as well, but they do an excellent job of writing narrative melodies that feel like they mean something. Like, there are bands, I'm not going to name names, but I listen to the guitar solos, and I'm like, yeah, good shred, definitely some skill put on display, but it doesn't do anything for the song, it doesn't advance it. It was more like a check mark. You gotta have a solo after the second chorus. We put one in. It was good, but that's it. It just feels like it was done because that's what you do in this music. And here, I don't really feel that way. Every solo, and we only got like 3 in 30 minutes. So, I mean, that right there should tell you something, that they're really only put in when the band feels like the song demands it. But they feel right. It feels like an extension of where we were already, whether that's a vocal melody. And we're done singing words now, and now the guitar picks up that thread and we explore it musically more so than the words itself. These moments, they just feel right to me. The way that they're paced, the way that they grow and shrink, the way that they help transition into the next idea. It all just clicks. It all just works. It sounds great and it feels narratively purposeful. I'm not going to say that every single solo feels like it was the only way that solo could have been. I don't know the song well enough to have a definitive idea like that of it, but they all felt like they were building towards something rather than just filling a specific void, as if we had written this section and we need something between it and we don't have words, so I'm just going to shred, right? No, it feels purpose built for it. It's something that I just genuinely love about this track from start to finish. There just isn't any melodies that feel lacking in any way. And they're all very tasteful, while still having moments to put your skills on display. I know exactly how skilled this guitarist is, at least as far as the song wanted to show me. Definitely not some dude who just picked up the guitar last week and, learned a couple of Metallica solos and is now, just playing some random shred. No, this dude's got chops. The bassist, dude's got chops. The bass tone in general just sounds fantastic. I love it. Like I said, I think it's a fretless guitar, also being finger plucked, so like that just has a warm resonant tone to it. Every time that I heard the bass and really focused in on what it was doing, neat idea, first of all, even if it's not like a solo or something, and just man, it's a tone you can melt into. Honestly, just love everything about it. So we've covered vocals here. We've covered the 2 instruments. All of this is like in a melodic harmonic area of things. I think the song does a great job in all of this. It's what brings me so much into the song and what helps me kind of look past some of the things that don't work as well for me. Like I mentioned, it has those harsh transitions which are kind of rough for me. And it covers a lot of ideas. It's very tough to take this all in on a first time and get it, at least narratively. Honestly, I felt like we were just jumping around between a lot of ideas at times. But because every section just absolutely grabbed the theater kid in me. I never did theater, but I consider myself a theater kid for some reason. Like, maybe if I wasn't so shy, I probably would have joined theater. I don't know. But it's so theatric. I think I just love musicals. I think that's it at the end of the day. I fit in, like I'm an honorary theater kid because I love musicals more than your average musical enjoyer. I don't know. I'm rambling at this point. It captures me though. Every single time. Chord progressions, melody writing, I'm here for it every section, every moment, and it never really lets me down. And that's just phenomenal. And that's going to take us to the last core instrument here, which is the drums. I don't really have a lot to say about the drums themselves. There are some really spicy ideas in there, but I think you can probably tell from me gushing about the harmonic and melodic side of things. I paid a lot more attention to them, and given the brisk speed of getting through this song, I didn't always have time to get through the melodic and harmonic instruments and then make my way over to the drums. For the most part, when my ear perked up for the drum work, it was because of something interesting happening. And granted, that happens quite a bit in this track. Some of these drum fills are bonkers. There's a bit of skill on display. There was one fill towards the end. I don't know. Somewhere around the 20-minute mark. It was in the back half of the song somewhere. Just absolutely filthy, just laying down as much sound as you can. Fast rolls across all the toms in the snare and using the bass kicks to fill in the space between the rolls. It was just like a monster sound right there. But there's also so much finesse in the drum work too. Offbeat accents, polyrhythmic ideas, alternate rhythmic phrasings as far as accent parts go, kind of creating like counter rhythmic ideas to what other instruments are playing. The drummers all over the place. And I wish I could speak about it more, maybe more specific ideas from the drums, but like I said, it just wasn't a key focus for me throughout this. But I do want this to sort of segue into rhythm and phrasing in general. We kick off the song in 4/4. It fits that singer-songwriter vibe. Very chill guy with a guitar just singing his heart out. But I think the first metal section we went into was a solid 7/4, right? And then from there we went into 4/4 and the vocals came in. We explored some 5s, 5/4 sections. We had some 3/4 sections. Yeah, we're kind of all over the place as far as time signature goes. But then there's also odd phrasings too. We're not just playing around with time signature, we're playing around with the way that we phrase a melody around time, or an idea, or a riff, or whatever. When you craft an idea, it's not just that we're in 4/4, it's how many bars do you want this riff, this idea, this repetition to be. Standard stuff is 4 bars. So in 4/4 you get 16 beats. You got a 16 beat section to lay out your idea and find a way for it to loop back into the beginning by that 16th beat. They don't always do that. There's quite a few sections in here where we will do 3 bars of 4, giving us a 12, but it isn't in 3, because we could break that up into 4 bars of 3 beats, but that has a very different flow to it. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 is very different than 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so they're going to have different pulses. I honestly believe that in some of these segments where I heard this 12-beat phrase, we were still in 4-beat bars. And so that's one way. We've taken the 4-bar phrase and condensed it by 1. But they also love to lengthen things. We saw this all over the place in all sorts of time signatures too. We might have 3 bars of 7 and then a bar of 11, 12, I don't even know. And it probably is on paper for them chopped up maybe into 2 smaller bars, maybe like 4 bars of 7 and then a bar of 5 or something. That makes a lot more sense than 3, 7 and then like a 12 or something. But the idea is that this riff feels self-contained, and then they'll take this little piece, at the end of the riff, and then just sort of noodle over that same idea, maybe repeat it a couple of times for an indeterminate amount of beats, at least as far as I could tell. It was difficult to figure out exactly how long these extensions were. And that's why I call them extensions. You kind of have the beginning of the riff, and then they take the last 25% and kind of repeat it in varying ways to extend the bar out, where it doesn't feel like the chord progression is moving. We've kind of locked that in as well, and the melody isn't really flowing anywhere. It's just kind of locked in place here, and we're kind of stuck in time for a little bit until we finally like get out of that stuck groove and we, the record stops skipping and we're finally moving forward again. But these extensions also vary in length. Sometimes it feels like they're about 1 extra bar, sometimes they're a little less, sometimes it feels like 2 extra bars. I never really could get a grasp on it. It's just like whatever they felt like playing, they just wrote in there, and it creates something that's utterly dynamic and difficult to parse and interpret, and you just kind of got to be along for the ride. I'm cool with that usually. I don't have too much of a problem here. It's a neat little idea. And beyond that, I just think about having to memorize all of this and play it live. And the more complex you're going to make your song, the harder it is to remember it. So that's also a pretty cool thing to keep in mind there. But yeah, just like on a pure rhythmic side of things, this is just a bonkers track that does so many things to keep the listener on their toes as far as rhythm and groove and time feel. And it is just wild. Now, speaking of wild, this was a better segue than I could have expected. There's some silly ideas in here. There really are. Stuff that's just like, in any other context, maybe by any other band, this would feel campy or cheesy or too over the top to where it's almost absurd. And honestly, I kind of felt that absurdity. It's what made me chuckle at times hearing some of these things. It's like, nah, you didn't do that. That's like way over the top. Um, but they do it with such sincerity and passion that you just have to take it at face value. And I think it ultimately works. I've made this comment before, but I think more extreme metals, you know, death metal, black metal, doom metal, they're all sort of absurd and campy in their own way. And you just kind of got to meet them on their own terms. There are certain progressive metal bands that I think are also that. And, you know, even some of the best Dream Theater out there, you know, one of the most popular progressive metal bands, there are some songs I've heard from them, and I'm just like, you know, this is ridiculous. Oh, Stream of Consciousness, right? It's a very cool song from like a complexity standpoint, but listening to it, it's really absurd. It is. It's a silly song. And if you meet them on their level, it's excellent. It is a blast of a time. But if you're not in the mood for it, I mean, it's like watching a campy horror film and just pointing out where their lack of budget made things obvious that that was a dummy that got its head cut off instead of, you know, anything else. It's like, yeah, you know, you're there to have fun. You got to be on the same level as the media. And I kind of feel that way about this at times, where maybe it's just a little over the top, little absurd, maybe even a little over theatric, but it ends up working, I think, generally speaking, even if it does cause me to laugh. And probably the worst places, I feel like there's so many times I will chuckle at something musically and I'll see a comment, dude laughed at the most depressing part of the song. Like that's the part where the vocalist is singing about being the most heartbroken or something. And I'm chuckling because the music just went to this absurd direction. That probably happened here too. I don't know. I feel like that happens way too often. Um, I think that's mostly all I wanted to talk about. Like I said, I do have a list. It's I guess it's like 12 sections, give or take, that I picked up that I kind of segmented out. I was kind of hoping at the start of it I'd be able to say, oh, you know, I kind of see this pattern here. We went from this emotion to this emotion to this style to this idea. And I can kind of see a narrative painted through that. I don't. I do think it's interesting how often we return to ballads. I love the ballads. We had a guitar duet with the piano around 10 minutes into the song that I loved. We had a silly breakdown right after that at minute 12. Talk about massive contrast. You know, 15 minutes in, ridiculously awesome bass solo. I had to write that one down, even though it's not a section in and of itself. I mentioned that the third movement starts at 16 minutes in, which means that the first two movements make up the first half and the final movement makes up the final half. That's a lot of weight put on that last movement, which is interesting but also not too absurd. I'm pretty sure some of the three-part movements that we've looked at as far as orchestral music on this channel, I feel like the third movement is typically longer. I don't know, I might be misremembering some stuff, but that feels kind of accurate. The Phrygian mode at 17 kind of comes out of nowhere. It doesn't really develop into anything, but I love that section. I'm just such a huge fan of Phrygian. And actually, now that I think about it, it's probably Phrygian dominant, which has a little bit more bite to it. Metal likes to go that direction. But, you know, it's a series of words. And I'm like, yeah, this is kind of cool, but I don't know what it means. Just a series of sections. And that's kind of what I said at the beginning of this too, is that it's just so dense that I think it'd be impossible to get a full view of this entire song on a first time listen. It makes more sense that I get more of a macro level, bird's eye view, surface level understanding of it, kind of get the bigger picture. And after a few more listens, maybe like a couple dozen, becoming very familiar with it, maybe even being able to, you know, hum parts from memory, that's when I'd be able to finally start to see how it all pieces together. I expect a lot of lyrics on this. We're already 64 minutes in. I expect this lyrical dive to probably be like 15 minutes long. But that's what we're going to do right now. So let me go read some of that, see what's going on with this track. Alright, this is a song that is told across 16 verses, 11 choruses, and 13 specified chapters or parts. I'm curious where my three movement concept lines up with this, if there's any, I don't know, time skips that might justify the silence in there, to read them more as still a single song more so than three movements of one. But right now at this point, I don't have that information. The first movement or chapter is called And the Earth Wept and is actually an added section to the original poem. As usual, I find out some of this extra information through annotations, although this is the only annotation on this whole thing. Yeah. And it's just to let you know that, like I said, it's not from the original poem. It's from Mother Earth telling the people who are leaving to go, that she forgives them for destroying her, and that it's better off if they just leave and be gone from this planet. Um, Says, I tucked you in so gently, and still you turned from me. You stepped on my heart, but I forgave you just like mothers do. Soon my body will burn to ashes and dust. The rain will turn all that glitters to dust. There's one last pill for the pain, so let me explain that while my bruises stay, I know you were never meant to. These scars just fade away, and I'm sure you never knew. So let December be a new year beginning, and take what's left and move on and fly away. Even though I wrote down that minute 2 was the film score section, I forgot that there was this big orchestral instrumental part to this song that was fantastically written. This is part 2, A Poisoned Land, and I guess this was supposed to symbolize the war that led to the destruction of the planet. Because section 3, chapter 3, is where we finally begin to see the story take place. It's called Leaving Home, and it's an entire stanza about somebody getting onto the starship and getting ready to take off and saying their last goodbyes to Earth, telling her that now you have time to heal. Chapter 4 is called Takeoff. It's just a stanza about leaving. Chapter 5, A Turn for the Worst, talks about an asteroid coming towards the ship, them swerving but still getting hit, going too wide to make Mars, which was their destination, and there's no turning back now because the guiding units are broke and cracked. So now they just drift into the void, through nothingness deployed, with an empty star become aware our lives are now destroyed. It says that the fears are hard to hide, but they'll never win this. So they just drift a while. Chapter 6 is A New Balance. This is where things start to get a little vague for me. You'll see in a second, we are introduced to a new character called Mima. I don't know who this is. It says, Mima, lead the way to where life belongs. Shine your light. Be a beacon of hope at night and be our guide. I don't know who this is. I don't know if this is an actual person. I don't know if this is someone they're praying to. Some sort of deity. I don't know. It says that they were trying to leave a planet and now they have found that they're trapped in a metal box and they need a light to show them that this isn't the end. Chapter 7 is called Death of the Goddess. It says, inside Mima's eyes we lived our lives. We have no home anymore. Mima showed the final war. Her circuits bled and... Wait, no, Mima's not the ship. Anaria is the ship. What is Mima? Anyways, it says her circuits bled and fried as our mother died, and she's darkened by our sins. We saw home so blue, torn in two. By the hands of her own child, humanity is a festering cancer that dug her own grave. So whatever Mima is, just reminded humanity, look, this is why you left home. Y'all ruined things. I think it's interesting that if this is based off of the poem, the original poem, that it does go into this already, and we didn't need that interlude at the beginning from the perspective of Earth. I think it honestly would have worked better to kind of start in media res there of everyone leaving, and you're left wondering, why are they leaving Earth? What's going on here? And then you get this moment. Because right now it feels like I'm being explained something that I already knew. And that doesn't feel as well executed as if they had just done this here and avoided the intro. Not that I think this story needs a mystery, but having that little question at the back of my mind, it works. I mean, it's cliche, but it works to have the listener stick around or the audience stick around because they have questions that need answered. Then we get to chapter 8, The Age of Confusion, Part 1, Despair. This is where things really get confusing for me. We have two stanzas here that talk about how people are dealing with this, being locked in this ship. Says that there's a deafening silence. We know who to blame for the situation we're in, but it doesn't really help the situation. And then it says, her demise was theirs. Stained by their disease, her screen recedes. Our real eyes realize they beguile us with all their minds. I don't understand this. Unless he's trying to say that I didn't ruin the earth. The other people in here did. They're the ones who started the war. They're the ones who damaged the planet. I just lived there. And if this is a moment for part of the group to start turning on the other part, but I don't know, especially since the next stanza is The Age of Confusion Part 2, Lust, and it talks about a giant orgy with everyone on board. Yeah, that kind of comes out of nowhere. Chapter 10 is The Age of Confusion, Part 3, Reason. It says, as the orgies fade and lust no longer attracts, the brain will subdue the flesh and put the focus on facts. Okay, so what are the facts then? We go to chapter 11, The Aftermath. I still cry and I still miss her. I was just a little boy running through the endless garden of our home. Away, some say, never ever, we'll leave this God-forsaken place, and 10,000 shivers remain as we part. Is this a flashback to leaving? I don't know. He says that we'll no longer see rainbows in the dark, and that we are now the wielder of illusions, as our goddess gave in when she saw what we had done, and we had killed the earth and burnt it to flames. This kind of goes on for a while, continuing on with the same idea. I think this is the longest section at 8, 9 stanzas, but it's mostly the same thing being repeated over and over. And then we get to chapter 12, Dining on Ashes, and it says that 20 years later, people have grown wrinkled and jaded. There's nothing new outside the window, just darkness that stares back at you. And it says there are thousands weeping and hundreds cried in dismay 20 years today. It talks about people trying to repent for all that they had done. Maybe this is trying to reason with their actions of the past and hoping that maybe they could get back to Earth. But again, I think their navigation systems are still shot. Chapter 13, the final one, it says the curtains fall. And it talks about, I think, how he's the last person on the ship. It says the halls of our ship now are void of all but death. Our lives have passed. Our hearts were broken by the endless dark. And our new paradise, the one to replace the one we burned so bad, the God we hoped for left profaned, all wounded and forlorn on the home we scarred. So basically, anything that could have saved us, including our God, is left on the planet. We abandoned it all. We burned it, left it to die. Now we're out on our own. He says, I stand here. One heart still beats. I bid you farewell. The curtain will now descend. Somewhere in time we were living. Remember us then. So basically, this is the end of humanity. And he says, hopefully, somebody gets this message and our legacy can be documented somehow. It doesn't really talk about... I guess my problem is getting from the point of, we've been drifting in space for a few years and it's kind of getting tiresome to everyone else is the problem. Also, let's have an orgy. Also, 20 years later, everyone's dead but me. Like that's a really big skip of events, and I just don't see the justification for some of the actions in here. But at least I think at the end, it's quite clear what it's about. That without the Earth, we have nothing left for us. And even if we try to leave it, space doesn't care for us like the Earth did. Both in a metaphorical way, figuratively, of sort of personifying the Earth as a mother figure for humanity, but also I think from a scientific angle, there's very few planets where humans can live. We kind of formed over, so many years of evolution, specifically built for this planet and its environment. We can leave, we can go exploring, but what are the chances we find something else that works for us? So, either way, we should take care of it, either because it's our mother or because scientifically we have nowhere else to go. I think that metaphorical layer is felt really well here. But there's some literal jumps in here that I'm kind of curious if the poem has the same temporal issues, or if this was just a problem of translation, bringing the poem into the realm of music and having to combat with maybe a different time length, playing around with musical ideas, having to have, shared time with other instruments and solos and stuff. Yeah, I don't know all that went into it. But generally speaking, I'd say like 70% of this is solid. It works well. I'd have to go back and listen to the song again with the lyrics pulled up in order to see how these narrative moments pair well with the music that's going on. Like I said, that opening film score section is supposed to represent the war itself. I think that kind of worked okay. So they probably do have a bit of sense of how to craft a musical emotion for the narrative elements going on. I'd just love to kind of have more evidence than a gut feeling that says, yeah, the sections of the music probably work with the lyrics. I can't make that defined statement yet. If you're still here, geez, like 80 minutes later, thank you for sitting here and watching this whole thing, getting through this song with me, and exploring it. It's pretty good stuff. These are my thoughts. Seventh Wonder's The Great Escape. What did you think of this track? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Maybe you have your own interpretation or opinion on things. Please put all of that and any other thoughts you have down in the comments section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link for Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. Alright, that wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC, as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.